right, I'd like to call the Health and Human Services Finance Division back to order from recess. Welcome back, everyone. Seems like we just left, I know. But thank you all for coming back this evening so we can finish up a couple of important bills. So I don't think we need to officially count a quorum again, although I think that we do have, I think I can tell that a lot of the members are here. And so I think we can probably get right to it. And Representative Moran, are you here? I think I saw you. There you are.
Representative Lively, I am here.
Excellent. So we're going to go first to House File 3563, Representative Moran. And Representative Moran, would you like to move your bill?
Oh, okay, we're doing 3563 first. And I'm sorry, but my video won't open up so I can see, so you can see me.
Oh, okay. So, well,
we're gonna work it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, Madam Chair, I would like to move the A1 amendment.
Okay, well, first, Representative Moran is going to first move the bill to be re-referred to Ways and Means.
Yes.
And then Representative Moran has an A1 amendment to put the bill in the form in which she would like to discuss it. And so, Representative Moran, should we adopt that first?
Yes, Madam Chair. And I have two amendments.
Okay, so let's just, and they're both, as I understand it, they're both technical amendments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the A1, Representative Moran is moving the A1 amendment. Is there any discussion? This is just to put it in the order in which she wants to discuss the bill. So if everyone would just unmute, I think we can do this on a voice vote. So all those in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The motion prevails. The A1 is adopted. And then there's an A3 amendment. Is that the one you wanted to move, Representative Moran?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, so Representative Moran now moves the A3 amendment, again, to get the bill in the form in which she'd like to discuss it. Any discussion to that motion? All right, all those in favor of the A3, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The motion prevails. Okay, Representative Moran, we have the amended bill before us. Please go ahead and present the bill.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. For the purposes of the A1 amendment, what it does, it removes the requirement for DHS to update the table consistent with the quadrennial review. And then the A3 amendment, fixed language, adding or, and moving the phrase highlighted before the bullet list to reflect the intent, which is to ensure the court is clear that it may be deviant from the table when the only change in circumstances is an increase to the custodian parent's income. And one of the three conditions below applies. So the way it's currently written, it is missing the word or, which means all three would need to apply.
Okay.
That was not the intent.
All right.
Okay.
All right, very good. Why don't you go back to the beginning and just give us a brief overview of what the bill is about, and then we do have some testifiers.
Okay, so the bill supports recommendation that was put forth by the Child Support Task Force, which was created in 2016 and included a diverse group of stakeholders to review and recommend changes to our current child support guideline table. The table has not been updated since January the 1st of 2007. The task force met over the course of 2.5 years and issued a final report in October of 2019. During this process, the task force engaged many experts, communities, and stakeholders regarding the proposed changes. The members of the task force updated the current guideline by making adjustment to the USDA cost estimate for child support expenses in addition to other changes. Studies show that ordering a parent to pay a child support order that is set too high causes conflict between the parents, giving the receiving parents unreasonable expectation and frustrating the paying parents that they cannot provide the support required in addition to their own living expenses. So in 2011, a study out of Orange County, California found that in order to maximize compliance and consistency of payments, order must be set within a parent's ability to pay. And parents with low conflict and high family participation are most likely to make their payments. If that happens, it is definitely a win-win for the children. So the proposed changes to the guideline table reflected in House File 3563 are more fair and equitable in order to do a few things. It promotes family connections between both parent and children. It decreased conflict and stress between parents that is detrimental to them and their children. It increased consistency and reliability of child support payments to help stabilize children's households. And it increased self-sufficiency for families. So this legislation is supported by the Minnesota Family Support and the Recovery Council, the Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administrators in Ramsey County. So it has, really good support. It is also a bipartisan bill. I have been working really closely with Representative Peggy Scott. And so in saying that, I would like to turn this over to my next testifier, Amy Anderson.
Okay, thank you very much, Representative Moran. So, well, I had on the list to testify, I had former Representative Diane Anderson, but certainly Amy Anderson, if you wanted to had some explanation to add to the bill, that would be fine. Are you here?
I am here,
Okay.
Chair. This is Amy Anderson from Ramsey County. Thank you. I just want to clear up a little confusion that I had. You had identified it as Bill House File 1050. This is actually House File 3563.
No, we know we're on 3563.
Okay, great. So I'm testifying in place of Melissa Rosso this evening because she had an obligation that she couldn't get out of. Melissa was a member of the Child Support Guideline Task Force that was created by the legislature in 2016. The legislature outlined what members should be on the task force, and it included 4 members from the legislature, including Representative Peggy Scott and Representative Lori Pryor. It included 4 parents, 2 obligated parents, and 2 parents who were receiving support. It included legal aid. It included the Minnesota Bar Association with the Family Law Section. It included a representative of the courts, a representative of the Tribal Child Support Program, a representative from the Minnesota County Attorneys Association, and someone from the Minnesota Family Support and Recovery Council, and also someone from the Department of Human Services. That entire group met over 29 times from September 2016 to June 2019. They issued their report to the legislature in October of 2019. That report did include a minority report. The task force had really long and thorough meetings discussing all of these issues, all these concerns and issues that were raised. And they consulted with economists, received public feedback at nearly all the meetings. Some meetings set aside solely for public feedback. And they came up with this recommendation. And this was a task the legislature gave them to complete. And they have done so. And then Ramsey County brought the bill forth since it wasn't being brought forth by DHS. So we wanted to get it going. And the file that's in front of you are the recommendations, most of them which were approved by the task force. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And members, we can, I don't see any questions, but we could probably hold those to the end and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of any of the testifiers. Former Representative Diane Anderson, did you also want to add? Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm Diane Anderson. I'm a former state representative, and I worked on this, a couple of sections. I worked on sections 5 and 6 of this bill specifically, and there was a group of people who worked on those sections with me, and we received technical assistance from DHS, and we also been working with legal aid on some of the language. I believe these sections of the bill are non-controversial, and I think, from what I've seen of the fiscal note, there are no fiscal impacts from sections 5 and 6. So basically, what these two sections do is modifies our current statute 518A.40 regarding just the child care portion of child support payments. There's 3 parts to the child support amount. There's a basic child support amount, a child care support, and medical support. So the child care support must be based on the actual child care expenses. And the current law does not adequately address some issues regarding when these child care expenses change. And so that's the focus of these 2 sections here. In many cases, the obligor is not notified when the child care expense changes or ends. And so this bill is requiring the obligee to notify the obligor when the child care expense ends, and also gives the obligor an annual document with the child care expenses from the previous year. And so one of the other things we're trying to do in these 2 sections was to just have a low-cost way for people to get their child support modified when there has been a change in the child care expenses. And so those are the main issues of why we are putting out sections 5 and 6. And I can stand for any questions if you want any more details.
Great, thank you very much. And Ms. Anderson, I know you're a former representative. I served with you, but are you representing anybody today, or are you just here as a private citizen?
So just as a private citizen today.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we have a couple of other testifiers who wanted to speak to us about the bill. Jacob Quaid. Is Jacob Quaid here?
Can you see me now? Yep.
Okay, I can hear you. Yes,
Okay,
welcome. Welcome to the committee. And please just tell us your name and if you represent anyone, and then just 1 or 2 minutes, please.
Okay. My name is Jacob Quaid, and I'm here representing just as a private citizen. Good evening, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you and welcome, and allowed for me to speak this evening at this evening's hearing. There's a couple of points I want to bring up as just recommending or asking that every legislator on this committee, curious if you all have ever read the Child Support Performance State Report. This is a required report to the feds about collection of the rates of this program. That's a wealth of information. Every legislator who has not read this should read this and be informed before they vote on this bill. It's important not to overlook the table. It is based on gross income of both parents, and the state is saying how much money we should spend on kids monthly in one house. If these numbers come from the USDA says 29% is for housing, which parents are no longer together. Each parent has to find their own housing, and each parent has to have space for their child. Why isn't 29% taken off the top for each number on here? If it's claimed to be housing adjustment, then why is it not put on there? This bill does not allow for full disclosure to the public, which is no way for the average person to even know what the final child support obligation will be in this bill alone. And there's no way to know even if it's enough to qualify for modification. Does everybody know what it costs to hire an attorney for a modification? If you can't afford child support, you can't afford an attorney to reduce the child support. The table is way too high. Why don't people who create this chart not seek to assure a reasonable table? If the table is even lower, that says two parents are even making $15 hour gross income. They spend $818 a month for one child. For basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, and transportation. Child support is not intended for sports, camps, and other expenses. That's all extra. $818 does not include child care and medical, which can be $500 to $1,000 monthly. At this rate, nobody can afford to have kids, especially 2 households. why is child support based on gross income and not net? Nobody pays their bills off their budget on gross income, so it needs to be changed to net income. There's also many problems with child support, and majority of all the same programs have remained unaddressed for over 30 years. Parents go to jail and get their driver's license taken away, and they can't afford to basically pay the high child support. So the county agencies, take away their license for 14 years, and now they drop little and raise and earn approximately $31,000 a year to $48,000 a year with one child, and it's supposed to be a victory. This bill window is addressing to make child support agency have compassion. No dad have ever talked to in the state would say child support is compassion. In fact, there's enforcement measures based upon input income or more dramatic than to the IRS. All child support cases in the 4D system with the percent of them falling into income ranges will see an increase. All those between $5,200 and $62,000 annual joint income. I'll just ask for that members remember that when they're voting as well. Also, Representative brought up earlier about Orange County, California, no more than 18% in California. In California, that support includes medical and child care. In Minnesota, that's added on top of the 18%. We have to provide medical and child care. So,
okay, Mr. Quaid, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have Mike Sieber. Mr. Sieber, are you here?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi. Please introduce yourself and
Sure.
if you represent anyone.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm Mike Sieber. Hi, everybody. And thank you. I attended almost all the task force meetings. I was there for, it seemed like a lot more than 29 of them. It appears like this bill is in reference to a transmittal to the states from the federal government dated January 5th, and there's another one dated January 9th, basically telling them that the low income orders are too high, among other things. So it's great that child support is being reduced in this bill. That's a wonderful thing. However, it's too little and too late. The agency has known since 2006 that these tables were way too high. They changed the tables several times to include income shares. And then again, they made a parenting time adjustment. And at both those junctures in years past, it was also known that the orders were too high. People are going to jail. You are incarcerating people for not being able to pay these too high orders. And to say that's this is a victory, it's a tiny step in the right direction, but this is not really a victory for those people who were ordered to pay way more than they had the ability to. And that is actually a federal requirement that they have, the orders are set for people's ability to. I forgot to mention, I'm known as the grumpy child support critic. Yeah, I've been around way too long. I've been doing this since 1992. And it seems highly irregular to me that Ramsey County is bringing this bill. Why isn't the Minnesota Department of Human Services bringing this bill? It's in their jurisdiction. But at any rate, there's far too many problems yet to be addressed to take a lot of victory laps on this and to congratulate ourselves. There is a huge problem with imputation of income, driver's license and professional license suspensions, asset seizures, arrests, financial institute data matches, program irregularities and mistakes, orders still being set way too high. A major problem in this bill with these tables since the very beginning is that the USDA basis that the tables are based on, even though it was deviated downwards, is not data. It's self-reported figures that I don't believe even qualify as data. Using gross income, as the previous gentleman said, is not appropriate. The reason this was discussed in the task force and the reason they wouldn't go for net income is that the Minnesota Department of Human Services agency is afraid that people are cheating on their taxes, and they wouldn't take the net income from people's tax returns. It's been known long before the 2011 Orange County study that the orders need to be set reasonably. We didn't need that. Amy Anderson, I've known for probably 20 years. I thank her for her work on this. And she mentioned that the committee took public comment, or the task force took public comment, but I don't believe they addressed any meaningful issue coming out of that public comment. I testified many times, others testified. I recorded almost all the meetings, and I don't see any meaningfully addressing any of those comments that were maybe inconvenient.
Okay, Mr. Sieber, I need you to kind of wrap it up if you could.
That's really all I had. So thank you for hearing me. I appreciate that.
All right. And Mr. Sieber, you didn't say whether, I assume you're just a private citizen, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I just want to say, at the legislature, we really benefit from people who are private citizen advocates who come and become experts in an area and give us their expertise. And I just want to thank you for doing that. I don't think I've met you before, but we appreciate your advocacy. We know that we have plenty of people around advocating because they're paid to do so, and we appreciate those who do it because they care about an issue. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
So with that, are there questions from members?
Madam Chair,
Representative Moran.
Yes, would it be okay if I can have Amy Anderson respond to maybe some of Jacob Quaid and Mike Sieber's concerns?
Well, if members have questions about it, I think we could do that. I don't know if, I'm not seeing that any members do have questions.
That's fine.
So, if members do want to hear some response, please do ask. But I'm not seeing any. Oh, yes, Representative Baker.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I'm glad this is a super small step forward, but I wanted to maybe ask Representative Moran, because I don't hear much of this. I've been in this committee for a few years now, and this is the first time I've really kind of heard about child support and reforming it to a way that starts making hopefully less conflict with mom and dad. I think that's a big part of why I think this is a good thing. I've always had a problem with, and typically as an employer, I've seen this with fathers that whether they get behind or they've had some issues with addiction and they're trying to get back everything right. But I've seen too many people lose their driver's license because they are behind in child support payments. Is this the kind of task force or the same kind of group we have to work through in the future to address this kind of an issue? Because I see that as too problematic for people keeping jobs when they're taking away their driver's license. And can you just address that, I guess, Representative Moran? And if folks like me want to address this in the future, this is a problem that I think we need to continue with. But anyway, just some thoughts on that, I guess, to the author, Madam Chair.
Representative Moran.
Yes, Madam Chair. Well, Representative Baker, I would definitely agree with you that for way too long, there have been many punitive pieces, and it really doesn't make sense for someone to lose their car and then cannot work in order to pay child support. And I definitely agree with Mike Sieber that it's been a long time coming. It's a small piece, but it's been this way too long, and it has had really negative impacts on oftentimes fathers, who wants to have a bigger role in the child's life, but because of the poor intake with the mother and the father, and the lack of agreement between the two, the father has not always been there for the child. And so this bill would definitely put some parity and some fairness back into it, however little it is. I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to pass it over to Amy Anderson, who was a part of the Child Support Committee.
Right. Thank you, Representative Moran. Amy Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I was actually not a member of the task force, but I attended all the meetings and did assist in putting this new table together. I am an attorney at Ramsey County that works in the Child Support Enforcement Division. So I'm very familiar with Representative Baker's question about the driver's license suspension. That's one of the things that has been out there for a long time. It typically takes about 6 months of non-payment for someone to actually lose their license. And every county is different. But in Ramsey County, we are willing to work with people all the time on setting up a payment agreement so they don't lose their license. Unfortunately, and I just had a case the other day in court where the person didn't know about the hearing because they don't open their mail. So they need to read notices from us and then they can contact us and set it up. Our position is never to take someone's driver's license if they can sign a payment agreement. If they think their child support is too high, Ramsey County regularly enters into payment agreements that start at a lower amount and then move up. Gives them a chance to file a motion to reduce their child support if they need to. So it is something that is of concern.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. And I just would say, Representative Baker, this is something that has been, it's one of those issues that I've been hearing about for quite a while. And I think this would be more of a public safety committee or maybe judiciary committee kind of issue, but I think you will find a lot of support for your concern about that just as Representative Moran expressed. So, you know,
and thank you, and thank you for that. I just, what I'm seeing and hearing is that it takes about every 10 years to make any kind of a small change in this thing. I think we need to be more proactive about the way of the world today and how critical licenses are and things like that. So I do hope that in the future we can be more current on this. So I appreciate the comment on that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And members, we're really here to deal with the fiscal note. I mean, since we are a fiscal committee, and I wonder, is Mr. Berg is on the call? I think you are. If Mr. Berg, would you be able to just give us a brief explanation of the fiscal note here before we vote on the bill?
Madam Chair, members, yeah, it's a pretty simple fiscal note. It was made based on the 1A amendment that you adopted initially. And I understand the 3A amendment, I would not think would change it. And I understand DHS has confirmed that with Mr. McQuillan. I haven't talked to them directly about it. But this bill costs $123,000 out of the general fund in fiscal 21 with tails of $25,000 a year. And that's entirely for systems modification costs.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, not seeing any further questions from members, I think we're probably ready to move to a vote on the bill. So Representative Moran is going to renew her motion that House File 3563 as amended be re-referred to Ways and Means. So we'll have to do a roll call on this, and the chair votes aye.
Schumacher. Acom.
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher. Acom.
Aye.
Baker.
Aye.
Bierman.
Aye.
Cantrell.
Aye.
Franson.
Aye.
Grunhagen.
Aye.
Haley. Helverson.
Aye.
Hamilton.
Aye.
Jordan.
Aye.
Keel.
Aye.
Kunish Podine.
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Munson. Noor.
Aye.
Olson excused. Schultz.
Aye.
And I will go back to the two. I didn't hear a response from Haley and Munson. (17 ayes).
All right, so on a vote of 17 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails and the bill is referred to Ways and Means. So thank you very much for members and people who came to be testifiers on that bill. We will now move on to the next bill, which is also Representative Moran. And that is House File 1050. And there is also an author's amendment, I understand, on House File 1050. And members, just as context, House File 1050 is a bill that we have heard before. It was part of the omnibus bill in the 2019. It didn't get all the way through, but it is back before us because Representative Moran needs to put this amendment on the bill. So that's why we are kind of rehearing the bill today. So Representative Moran is going to move that House File 1050 be re-referred to Ways and Means. And I think she'd like to move the A7 amendment, Representative Moran?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the A7 amendment.
All right, to put the bill in the order in which she'd like to have it discussed. So if everyone would just unmute, we can do that on a voice vote, and then we can discuss the bill as amended. So all those in favor of the A7 amendment, please say aye.
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 Please no.
Wow.
All right, somebody's making a lot of noise in the background, but you can all go back on mute now, and thank you. Okay, so with that, Representative Moran, go ahead and introduce the bill.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to give some statements around what the amendment does. It does 5 things. It changes the time of calculating disqualifiers to the date of the conviction of the crime, not the time of the crime was committed. This later date is more clear and easier to determine. The bill adds 5 additional crimes back into statute after negotiation with Jane Renham and Patty Moses and others. It changes the time for implementation so that DHS can have a year to work with counties on any implementation details. It clears up a new federal policy relating to disclosure of records from the FBI. And finally, it clarifies a process to allow foster care youth and others in the home who turn 18 during the pendency of a foster care license, but have a disqualifier. So those are the 5 things. And just as a reminder to everyone, the main purpose of this bill is to bring Minnesota foster care licensing standards more in line with our adoption standards. Under current law, our foster care licensing standards and processes create many more barriers for individuals, including relatives, than our adoption standards. This inconsistencies creates problems for placing children in permanent safe homes, and it isn't good for family preservation. This bill also brings Minnesota in line with current federal policies and recommendations related to foster care licensing and background checks. You know, Madam Chair, we really feel that it's time for Minnesota to rethink the way that the way that we license foster care providers. Unlike other providers requiring a DHS license, family foster homes are not a business. They should be a safe haven for children who can't live at home. For communities of color, the statutory barriers in our current foster care licensing statute have a greater impact, and this law will help remedy that disparity. When children can remain with relatives in foster care and stay connected to their families, they have better long-term outcomes, including higher high school graduation rates, decreased rates of mental health disorders, and less overall trauma. COVID-19 has made family visitation for children within the child welfare system difficult. Increasing access for relatives to obtain foster care licenses during this time will have made it easier for children to both remain with family, but also see family more often and consistently while they are in the system and out of home and out of their home.
Okay, so Representative Moran, I see that you're muted now. I don't know if you did that on purpose or.
I did not do that.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
now you are unmuted again. Okay.
So finally, the bill is supported by the Minnesota Association of County Social Service Administration, the County Attorney Association, several private adoption agencies, Hennepin County, the NWC of Minnesota, several tribes, the Indian Child Welfare Center, Aspire Minnesota, and many constituents across a breadth of experience and perspectives, and provides a well thought out and negotiated balance to ensure that both the safety for children, but also a more reasonable list of barriers that doesn't exclude many wonderful foster parents who have a perfect past. This is a strong bipartisan bill. It is supported by many of our members on Health and Human Service Finance. And so I hope that I can garner the support of us, of our committee once again. And most importantly to me, because the amendment that was put on this bill, the fiscal note in the first year was cut in half. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Moran. We have one testifier, Ms. Woolman. And I don't see any questions yet. And so Ms. Woolman, welcome to the committee. If you would please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you, Madam Chair. And actually, I just have to say, it's so nice to see all of you during this time here on Zoom legislating. It gives me huge, warm feelings about Minnesota. So thank you. My name is Joanna Woolman, and I'm the director of the Institute to Transform Child Protection at Mitchell Hamlin School of Law. I'm also a professor of law there. And I am here today to just give a brief overview of this bill, and I will keep my comments very brief because we have been here before. It is nice to see you all again. This is an important bill, and this bill will make an actual difference in the lives of children and families in Minnesota. It is good policy, and I would encourage you very strongly to pass it through this committee today. In Minnesota, we currently have a robust system in place in our state to carefully consider and vet individuals who want to be foster care providers. This bill makes that system work better for children and families and for county and state officials who do this work. And it makes it better, I think, for three primary reasons that I want to highlight today. The first reason is that it takes foster care licensing and creates a separate category for it within the larger DHS licensing statute. And I think that's a very good thing because the larger DHS licensing statute is very onerous and confusing and contains a lot of barriers and disqualifiers that are unrelated directly to child safety. So this is an opportunity for us to create policy that just relates to who we feel will be safe to be a foster care provider in Minnesota. The second reason this bill is really critical in terms of improving our current process is that it includes a new data forward provision. This requirement, which is not in the prior statute, requires the Department of Human Services to give a whole list of information, including all convictions that any individual applying for a foster care license has been convicted of over the years, information about prior employment, information about drug treatment, information about housing stability. There's a long list of requirements that DHS has to give to counties so that the county agents can make a safe, sound, nuanced, and individualized decision about who should get a foster care license for the child that they are working with. What I would like to highlight about the process in this bill is that all convictions that an individual has been, all crimes that someone has been convicted of will be considered both by DHS and by the counties. The list of disqualifying crimes that are contained in the bill currently create unnecessary barriers a lot of the time in Minnesota. And I will just share one point of data with you, which is that we asked DHS in 2018 to look at, for misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors in Minnesota, how many of those minor crimes did people ultimately get a foster care license when there was an initial red flag? Out of 80 applications, 76 were ultimately granted a DHS license. But when I say ultimately, I mean after 4 to 6 months of going through an administrative appeal process that could have been avoided for some of those minor infractions, and which we know we're ultimately going to give that individual a license. So this really is improving on our ability to be responsive more quickly, to meet the individualized needs of children, and to provide relief in a system right now that is lacking in foster care providers.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Woolman. That is very helpful. Are there questions from members? All right. I'm not seeing any. So I think we are probably fully informed and ready to vote since I'm not seeing any questions. So Representative Moran is going to renew her motion that House File 1050 as amended be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. So we'll be taking the roll on this bill, and the chair votes aye.
Schumacher.
Schumacher, aye.
Acom.
Aye.
Baker.
Baker, aye.
Bierman.
Aye.
Cantrell.
Aye.
Franson.
Aye.
Grunhagen.
Aye.
Haley. Halverson.
Aye.
Hamilton.
Aye.
Jordan.
Aye.
Keel.
Aye.
Kunish-Podine.
Aye.
Mann.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Munson. Noor.
Aye.
Olson excused. Schultz.
Aye.
$17 ayes.
All right. So on a vote of 17 to nothing, the motion prevails and House File 1050 is on its way to Ways and Means. So members, just to conclude here, this is likely our last meeting of this committee for the year. I really appreciate everybody coming back and letting us extend the meeting today. And thank you so much for your participation. It's our time to just be sure we thank everybody who's made all of this possible this year. First of all, to all of the members, it's been really wonderful working with all of you this year. Really have appreciated your seriousness and your steadfastness and hard work. I also want to thank our House research staff who just keep the place going. We know that. Ms. Clark-Fist, Ms. Punelli, Ms. Sunderman, and Mr. Chun, who are just absolutely fantastic all the time. Mr. Berg, our House fiscal staff, who makes us feel like we know something once in a while. Thank you so much for your help on everything, Mr. Berg. Especially, he helps me a lot, even what you guys don't necessarily see. Our partisan researchers, Jeremiah and Joe. Our committee legislative assistant, Krista Niedernhofer. Our pages, who aren't here doing their page work, but hopefully we'll see them again soon. And Patrick McQuillan, who I don't know if you all understand how hard Patrick works, but he definitely keeps this whole thing going. So with great appreciation to all of you for a really great year again. And we'll be seeing each other soon in lots of other contexts. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.